Hi guys, so in this particular session, what we'll be discussing about is Whitebirk. So it is from SPR's exam kit. Okay, so what we've been given is that. So Whitebirk meets the definition of small entity in its jurisdiction and compiles with IFRS for SME standard. SME standard. Okay, Whitebirk has entered into following transactions during the year ended 31st May 20x6. Whitebirk requires a new machine which will be included as part of its PPE. Whitebirk therefore commenced construction of the machine on 1st February 2006. So February, March, April, May. So February, March, April, May, right? So 4 months. This continued until the completion, which was after the year end of 31st May. Continued until its completion, which was after the year end of 31st May 2006. The direct cost were 2 million in February 2016, 1 million in each subsequent month until the year end. Okay, so 4 million, right? 2 plus 4, 6, which has incurred finance cost on its general borrowings. So it's general borrowing, okay, not specific borrowing. So what is the difference? Is general borrowing is average borrowing rate, right? So which could have been avoided if the machine had not been constructed. Of course. Whitebirk has calculated that the weighted average cost of borrowings for the year period 1st March on an annualized basis is 9%, right? So 9% into 4 divided by 12. So Whitebirk has incurred 1 million of research expenditure to develop a new product in the year to 31st March 2006. Additionally, it has incurred 0.5 million of development expenditure to bring another product to a stage where it is ready to be marketed and sold. So research expenditure directly expensed. We'll talk about that as well. So it's well, right? So in accordance with IS 23 and IS 38 intangible assets, advise the directors of Whitebirk on how the borrowing cost and the research and development expenditure should be accounted for in the year ended 31st May 2006. Okay. So discuss how the two transactions should be dealt with under SME standard. Okay, so two ways. Okay, so let's talk about that. First of all, borrowing cost. So IS 23 borrowing costs requires cost incurred when acquiring or constructing and qualifying asset. Okay, qualifying asset. To be capitalized the assets capitalized qualifying assets substantial time for time to be prepared for intended use or sale. Right, after that, the definition of borrowing costs includes the interest expense calculated by effective interest rate, effective interest method, you could say, method, finance charges on lease and exchange differences arising on or from foreign currency borrowings relating to interest costs, right? Borrowing costs should be calculated or should be capitalized during construction and include the costs of funds borrowed for the purpose of financing the construction of the assets and general borrowing which would have been avoided if the expenditure on the assets had not occurred. Borrowing costs are determined by applying a capitalization rate to the expenditure of the assets. Right. The weighted carrying amount of the machine during the period is how much is it? Let's see, okay, let's see it in the question. Okay. So this is 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Divide by 4, that will be our direct cost, right? So direct cost in February, and then 1 million in each subsequent month until the year end, right? So 4, not 4. So it will be 3 and then 4 and then 2. In total it will be 5, okay? Total will be 5. So basically what will happen is that $5 million divided by 4, right? Numlock. So 5 by 4, 1.25. 1.25 million, right? Uh, no. In total, it should be more than that. So it basically should be 2 plus the next month it will be 3. So 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 10, 9, 10, 14. 14 divided by 4. So it's 14 divided by 4, 3.5. So 3.5 is our average cost, right? And then the interest rate is during the period is 9%. 9%, right? 9% per annum. The total amount of the borrowing costs to be capitalized is the weighted average carrying amount of the stadium multiplied by capitalization rate. So it will be dollar, how much will it be? Basically dollar 3.5 million into 9% into 4 divided by 12. Okay, so what will happen over here is 3.5 into 0.09 into 4 divided by 12, 0.10, right? So 0.1, okay, million. This will be our answer. So what about the research and development? So according to IAS 38, intangible assets research expenditure does not give rise to probable economic benefits, so no intangible asset is recognized, and therefore the expense of $1 million is written off to profit or loss. Okay, IAS 38 requires the development cost to be capitalized if it meets certain criteria. So the project must give rise to an economic or gives rise to an probable economic benefits, comma, it is technically feasible he has enough resources to complete it, and the expenditure incurred must be measurable. Assuming this criteria are met, that's the presumption, the $0.5 million expenditure should be capitalized as an intangible assets. It should be amortized profit or loss. Does it say it's a definite life? Profit or loss to reflect pattern of use by the entity. So I think we need to talk about SMEs as well for these things. SME standard, right? So new product, right? Product. So it's basically that, right? So once that's also done, this is not number 2. It's only from note number 2. Does not really matter. So we will talk about SMEs as well, okay? So SME standard, first of all. SMEs standard in case of borrowing cost, the SME standard says that in accordance with SMEs standard, borrowing costs are always expensed to statement of profit or loss. No need to capitalize it, okay? Therefore, none of the borrowing cost would be capitalized. So next thing is regarding research and development expenditure. The SME standard states that an entity must recognize expenditure has incurred internally on an intangible item including all expenditure, all expenses on research and development activities has incurred. Okay, thus the expenditure, how much is it? 1 plus 1.5, right? Of $1.5 million would be written off to profit or loss. Easy, okay? Very easy treatment in case of that, right? So practical consideration and all. So one of the reasons why Whitebirk prepares its financial statements with SME standard is because of the difficulties involved every time a new IFRS standard is issued. Directors believe that the practicalities and the financial statement implications of regularly implementing new IFRS standards are overly onerous to an entity the size of Whitebirk. However, Whitebirk may have to transition to full IFRS standard if it continues to grow in size. Okay, discuss the key practical implications. I mean considerations, and then financial statement implications that the entity must consider when implementing a new IFRS standard. Okay, briefly explain the principles outlined in IFRS 1, first time adoption of IFRS that must be applied when an entity adopts full IFRS standards for the first time. So, first time adoption, key practical considerations, and financial statement implications, right, of a new IFRS standard. Okay, let's talk about it. When implementation or when implementing a new IFRS accounting standard, let's not only focus IFRS, an entity should prepare an impact assessment and project plan. The entity may need to spend money on training staff or on updating or replacing its systems, right? New processes and controls may need to be developed and documented. New accounting standard will most likely contain new recognition, measurement, and disclosure requirements. If the impact of these is not communicated, then investors' assessments of the of how management has discharged its stewardship responsibilities may change and affect their investment decisions. As such, management should communicate the impact of a new standard to investors and other stakeholders, particularly if it results in low profits or increased liabilities. Banking agreements often specify maximum debt levels or financial ratios based on figures reported in the financial statements. New reporting standard new Adopting new standard could affect those ratios, causing potential governance breaches. Okay. And dividends could be affected. Many jurisdictions have regulations which restrict the amount which can be paid out in dividends. This affects the impact of adopting new IFRS standard should be communicated to analysts. Some government use information prepared under IFRS standards for for statistical and economic planning purposes. Competitive advantage could be lost if a new financial standard requires extensive disclosures. Bonus scheme may need to be reassessed because the new standard could affect the calculation related or calculation calculation of performance related pay, right? Financial code regulations can so what could be the financial statement implications in case of financial statement where there is the introduction of a new accounting standard. The financial statement will need to reflect the new recognition, measurement, and disclosure requirements, which in turn will mean that entities will need to consider requirements of IAS 8 as per accounting policies, changes in estimates, and errors, right? IAS 8 contains a requirement that changes in accounting policies are fully applied retrospectively unless there are specific transitional provisions contained in the new IFRS standards being implemented, right? IAS 1 preparation of financial statement requires a third statement of financial position to be presented the entity retrospectively applies an accounting policy, restates items right, and those adjustments had a material effects material effects, material effect on the information in the statement of financial position, the beginning comparative period. IS 33 earnings per share requires basic and diluted EPS to be adjusted for the impacts of adjustments resulting from changes in accounting policies accounted for retrospectively. NIS 8 requires the disclosures of the amount of any such adjustments, right? That is also important in case from EPS, right? Because otherwise it might lead to misleading figures, right? So we need to adjust it retrospectively, right? When there is a change in accounting policy as a result of change in accounting policy. I mean, change in accounting policy standard can change the carrying amount of assets and liabilities, which will have deferred tax consequences as per IAS 12, right? So I think this should do the job. And then after that, what we've been required to explain is that the principles outlined in first time adoption of IFRS, right? 3 marks. Okay. IFRS 1 first time adoption IFRS says that an entity must produce an opening statement of financial position in accordance with IFRS standards as at the date of transition. The date of transition is the beginning of the earliest period for which an entity presents full comparative information under IFRS standards. its first financial statements produced using IFRS standards. Okay, so date of transition is most important thing, and when will be the date of transition is at the beginning of the period when it presents full comparative information. Okay, if the date of transition, entity must recognize all assets and liabilities required by IFRS standard. We recognize assets and liabilities not permitted. IFRS standards reclassify assets, liabilities, and equity in accordance with IFRS standards. Measure assets and liabilities in accordance with IFRS standards, and gains or losses arising on the adoption of IFRS standards at the date of transition should be recognized directly in retained earnings. Okay, and that is most important thing. So date of transition is important. So date of transition is the beginning of the earliest period for which an entity presents full comparative information under IFRS standards. Okay, usually it's the 1 year earlier than the opening statement of financial position. Okay, that's what normally they do, because if the transition is from will be I mean, if you want to adopt it today, then the transition rate will be 2019. Okay, and from that date you will present comparative information. Okay, so that's how we basically account for this kind of problem. So next we will look at foreign currency. So that will be interesting as well. Aspire, if you have any confusions until now, please do comment down below. I'll definitely be very happy to answer your comments or any queries that you might have. So I will see you in the next question. Until then, bye bye.